The night started like any other, until that knock froze my blood. Dinner was warm, easy, safe, or at least it pretended to be. The roasted chicken smelled like butter and garlic, the table lit by a soft yellow glow from the overhead lamp. My son was in the middle of a ridiculous story about a kid at school eating crayons, and my daughter was laughing so hard her nose scrunched up like a rabbit. My wife, Anna, reached across to refill my glass, smiling faintly, though her eyes seemed tired. That's when it happened. Ding-dong. The sound sliced through the laughter. My fork froze midair. Nobody moved. "It's 9:30, Anna muttered, glancing at the clock. "Who rings the doorbell this late?" The air shifted. I swear it did. The warm smell of chicken suddenly soured in my throat, replaced by something heavy, like damp wood. My kids went silent, staring at me as though I was supposed to have all the answers. I swallowed hard. "I'll get it," I said, though my voice didn't sound like mine. The hallway felt colder than the dining room. Each step creaked too loudly, echoing back at me. My hand hovered over the knob before I finally pulled the door open, and there he was. A man I had never seen before, sweaty, pale, his hair plastered to his forehead. His jacket was torn, his chest rising and falling as though he'd sprinted a mile. His hands shook at his sides, fingers twitching like they had a life of their own. His eyes locked on mine, wide, frantic. "Your house isn't safe," he rasped. His voice cracked, dry, like gravel scraping metal. "You need to leave. Now." Behind me, Anna gasped. "Who is it?" she called. I didn't answer. My throat was too tight. "Dad?" My son's voice wavered, cautious. Is it some delivery guy or something?" "No," I whispered, still staring at the stranger. His gaze flicked past me into the house, darting quick, like he was scanning. Left, right, up the stairs. His shoulders trembled each time his eyes landed somewhere, like he expected someone to jump out. "Please," he said again, louder this time. "You have to get your family out." Anna came up behind me, clutching her robe. "Sir, you're scaring my children," she said sharply. "You need to leave." But her voice cracked at the end. She was scared too. My daughter peeked from behind her mother, clutching her stuffed rabbit so tight the ears bent back. Tears welled in her big brown eyes. "Dad, who is he?" she whispered. "I don't know," I muttered. My mouth was dry, tongue stuck to my teeth. The man took a step closer. His shoes scraped against the porch wood. I caught the sharp, sour smell of sweat mixed with cigarettes. My instinct screamed to shut the door. But his eyes, God, his eyes, there was desperation there. "This isn't a prank," he said suddenly, as if he'd read my mind. His voice dropped to a whisper again. "They're already here. You don't have much time." "They?" I repeated. The word snagged in my chest like a hook. He glanced past me again, fixating on the staircase. His lips trembled before he forced out words. "Upstairs. They like upstairs." Anna tugged my arm. "John, close the door." Her nails dug into my sleeve. "He's crazy. Call the police." "Yeah, Dad," my son added nervously, trying to sound braver than he was. "It's just some psycho, right?" But I didn't move. Something about the man's trembling, the way his pupils darted, made my skin crawl. He knew things. "Who are you?" I demanded. My voice finally hardened. The man's lips parted. For a moment, he looked like he'd collapse. Then he leaned closer, so close I felt the heat of his breath against my ear. "I know your name, John." The sound of it, my name in his mouth, made my stomach twist. My legs locked in place. He shouldn't have known that. Anna's grip on me tightened. "How does he?" she began, but I cut her off with a sharp shake of my head. My heart pounded, rattling against my ribs. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to shove him off the porch. But I couldn't move. His whisper still echoed in my skull, each syllable crawling under my skin. How did he know my name? Then the stranger whispered my name, even though I had never seen him before. He shouldn't have known about the noises, but he did. The man stood in my doorway like a shadow that didn't belong to the night. His breath hit me first, cigarettes and something sour, like fear left too long in the air. His hand shook as he pointed past me, toward the dark mouth of the upstairs hallway. "They're already inside," he whispered. His voice cracked, the kind of crack that doesn't come from age but from dread. Behind me, my wife's nails dug into my arm. "Close the door," she hissed. "For God's sake, close it." I didn't. I couldn't. Something in his eyes kept me rooted there, wide, bloodshot, darting like he was tracking ghosts only he could see. My daughter's voice broke through the tension. "Dad? Who's that man?" I didn't answer, my throat locked. Instead, I asked him, steadying my tone, "Who are you?" He licked his lips fast like a nervous tick. His eyes flicked from me to the stairs, then back to me. "Doesn't matter who I am. What matters is what's up there." My skin prickled. The tiny hairs on the back of my neck stood like antennae. "What are you talking about? You hear them, don't you?" His finger twitched, still pointing upward. The creaks. The whispers. My blood went cold. How the hell did he know about that? The nights I'd lain awake, staring at the ceiling while faint thuds traveled across the floorboards. The mornings when keys or small trinkets seemed to vanish, only to reappear in odd places. I hadn't told anyone, not even my wife. "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied. His lips curled into something between a smirk and a grimace. "Yes, you do." My wife stepped forward, pulling me back by the sleeve. Her voice shook but carried a sharp edge. "Sir, you need to leave. Right now. Or I'm calling the police." He leaned closer, his breath hot and rancid against my cheek. "Call whoever you want. They won't help you. Not against them." His words lodged in me like splinters. Them. Always plural. Always unseen. "Dad," my son whispered. "He's scaring me." The man's eyes snapped to the boy. For a heartbeat, his expression softened, like he pitied him. Then it hardened again, and he stepped back, dragging a hand through his greasy hair. His fingers trembled. "You think you own this house?" he muttered. "You're just living in it, borrowing it, and sooner or later they collect." The hallway upstairs seemed to breathe at that moment. A draft slipped down the stairs, cold and metallic, like air escaping a cellar. I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He met my eyes, finally, fully. And in that gaze, there was no madness, only certainty. "Because I didn't listen when they warned me." The room tilted. My wife gasped beside me. "This is insane. Shut the door, now." But I couldn't shut it. I had to know. My curiosity burned hotter than fear. "What do you mean you didn't listen?" He laughed, short and hollow. "They start small. Missing things. A voice when you're half asleep. Then the shadows move. Then the faces appear." My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. "Faces?" He leaned in again, lowering his voice to a hiss only I could hear. "Check the mirrors. That's where they like to practice." The words crawled into me, sticky and vile. I flinched back. My wife pulled our children behind her, whispering prayers under her breath. The man straightened, his hand falling limp at his side. His shoulders sagged, as if speaking had drained the last of his strength. "They know I came here," he said finally. "That's enough for them to finish me. But maybe—" His gaze flicked upstairs again, lips trembling. "Maybe you'll stand a chance if you listen." And then, creak. A floorboard groaned directly above us. The entire house went silent. No one breathed. Not even him. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked upstairs, and we all went silent. The silence upstairs was louder than a scream. I froze at the base of the staircase, my hand gripping the banisters so tight my knuckles blanched. The house, once warm with the smell of roasted chicken and lemon furniture polish, now reeked of something damp, moldy, and unfamiliar, like rot seeping from the walls. My daughter's small hand tugged at my shirt. She clutched her stuffed rabbit so tightly its ear twisted backward. Her whisper was almost inaudible. "Daddy, someone's up there." Her words weren't a question. They were a fact. The stranger at the door didn't move an inch. His chest heaved, but his legs remained locked, as if stepping inside would kill him. His eyes, sunken, fevered, tracked me, watching every motion. My wife's voice was sharp and trembling. "Don't you dare go up there. Please, just lock the door, call the police. Please." I swallowed hard, grabbed the flashlight from the shelf by the door, and flicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, thin and weak, dust motes dancing in its path. "I have to know," I said, more to myself than to her. She clutched the kids tighter. "No, you don't. You don't owe anyone proof. Just stay here." But I was already placing my foot on the first step. Gruen. The wood cried under my weight, loud enough to make my pulse spike. Step, step. Every creak echoed like a warning shot. The air grew colder the higher I climbed, as if I were rising into a different house entirely, one that didn't belong to me. "Don't stop," the stranger rasped suddenly from the doorway. His voice was hoarse, almost breaking. "If you hesitate, they'll notice." I clenched the flashlight tighter, the cold metal sweating against my palm. Halfway up, I risked a glance back. My wife stood at the bottom, lips pressed white, arms wrapped protectively around the kids. My son tried to look brave, chin jutting out, but his wide eyes betrayed him. "Daddy!" he said softly. Please come back down. My heart fractured at that, but I forced myself higher. The hallway loomed ahead, black, silent, endless. When I stepped onto the landing, the smell hit me harder. Damp carpet, dust, something faintly metallic, like blood rubbed into wood. I lifted the flashlight, sweeping it across the hallway. And then I saw it, a shoe print, clear in the dust, too large to be my daughter's, too heavy to be my wife's, too unfamiliar to be mine. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The stranger's whisper floated up the stairs, eerily calm. Told you. I turned slowly, letting the beam trace along the carpet. More prints, leading toward the rooms. My legs felt like stone. I wanted to back away, to run, but my curiosity dragged me forward. The first door was the bathroom, empty, just the echo of dripping water in the sink. The second was the guest room. My light caught the rocking chair in the corner, and my heart nearly stopped when it shifted, creaking softly, as if someone had just left it. I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My wife's voice floated up from below. What do you see? What's there? I couldn't answer. My throat was locked tight. Instead, I moved toward the last door, my son's room. The prince led straight there. I pushed the door open. The air inside was colder, unnaturally still. His posters of superheroes seemed to watch me, their paper edges curled like sneers. I swept the light across the room. Nothing. Just the bed, the desk, the dresser. I exhaled shakily, about to turn back. Creak. The closet door. It shifted. Just slightly. On its own. I froze, the beam fixed on the crack widening in the dark. And then, from my son's room, the closet door creaked open by itself. I wasn't ready to see proof of someone else in my house. The closet door groaned on its hinges as I yanked it open, my hand trembling so hard I nearly lost my grip. The stale air hit me first, stale, heavy, and wrong. Sweat, cigarettes, the kind that seeped into fabric and clung like a warning. My son stood behind me, his arms crossed too tightly across his chest. Dad, I told you. I haven't touched this closet in weeks. His voice was sharp, defensive, but I caught it, the flick of his eyes to the floorboards before he met my gaze again. A micro-expression, quick as lightning, but enough to make my stomach turn. Don't lie to me, I muttered. My throat was dry, my words rasping. I dropped to my knees, pushing aside a box of old shoes and the brittle Christmas garland my wife swore she'd throw out last year. Something scraped across the wood as I dug deeper. And then my hand caught on it, a rough edge, fabric wedged tight behind the stack. I pulled it free. The rag dangled limply in my hand, dark and greasy, frayed on the edges. The smell hit me next, that same cheap tobacco and engine oil stench I'd tried to forget. No, I whispered, the word catching in my throat. My pulse slammed in my ears like fists on a locked door. My son leaned forward. What is it? I turned the cloth over in my hands, recognizing the pattern, the color, the exact patch of stitching near the corner. My gut twisted. I'd seen this fabric before, too many times. It wasn't just a rag. It was part of a uniform. Mark's uniform. The memory came back like a flashbang. Mark standing in the warehouse years ago, his voice low and venomous after I'd reported him for theft. You think you're safe just because you did the right thing? Watch your back. People like me don't forget. I stumbled back onto my heels, the cloth clutched tight. This belonged to Mark? My son frowned. Who's Mark? I didn't answer. My throat was locked. I carried it downstairs, my legs weak, like each step dragged me deeper into something I couldn't escape. My wife was at the dining table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I entered, and her face changed instantly. The color drained from her cheeks the second she saw what I held. Her fork clattered onto the plate. Where did you find that? I stared at her. You recognize it? Her lips parted, but no words came out, just a small tremble. She tried to hide it, but I saw. Her shoulders stiffened. Her hand tightened into a fist against the wood table. A controlled reaction. Too controlled. I asked you a question? I pressed, stepping closer. Before she could answer, the stranger shifted in his chair near the window. He'd been silent since last night, watching us like a hawk. Now he leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his shadow stretching across the floor. His voice was a whisper, rough and final. Told you. That was all he said. And it was worse than if he'd screamed. My wife flinched like the words had struck her. My son glanced between us, confusion deepening. But I couldn't shake the feeling. He knew more than he was letting on. I placed the cloth on the table between us, its stink filling the room. Explain this, now. My wife shook her head, too quickly. I don't know. Lie. The word rang in my head as sharp as glass. The stranger tilted his head, studying her. His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I saw something raw, anger, maybe, or pity. I couldn't tell. But his jaw flexed like he was holding back words that could tear our world apart. The room felt heavier. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounded like hammer blows. Every breath came shallow, ragged. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice low. If Mark has been in my house, if he's been anywhere near this family, someone's going to answer for it. Silence stretched between us, suffocating. Then, the lights flickered. Once, twice. The bulbs buzzed like angry bees overhead. And then, darkness. Complete. And then the lights flickered, and went out completely. Darkness makes liars of walls. You hear what you shouldn't. The blackout swallowed every corner of the house so fast it felt like the air itself had been cut. The hum of the fridge died, the hallway clock froze mid-tick, and the silence that followed pressed against my ears until I swore I could hear my own blood. Dad! My youngest screamed, her small voice cracking. I can't see anything! My son shouted from the stairs. Stay close! My wife's voice snapped, tight, sharp, too sharp. I could hear her pulling them in, her arms gathering them like shields. Her breath came fast, shallow. I fumbled through the kitchen drawers, fingers scattering cutlery, hunting for candles. My hand shook harder than I wanted to admit. The drawer slammed, my nerves jerking it closed too violently. Finally, metal struck glass. I found the candle tin and yanked it out. The scrape of the match head sounded like thunder in the silence. Flame bloomed, weak but alive. The light barely pushed back the dark, just a trembling circle that made the shadows twitch like they were breathing. The wax smell spread quickly, sweet, chemical, but beneath it was something sharper, fear. And then I heard it, whispering. Not from outside the house, from inside. I froze. The hairs on my neck rose. It was faint, like the rustle of dry leaves. Words tangled in low tones, too quick to catch. Do you hear that? I whispered. My wife's eyes darted toward me, wide, reflecting the candle flame like glass marbles. She shook her head too quickly. No. You're just... The stranger's voice cut her off from the living room. They're moving. My heart stopped. What did you say? I snapped, stepping toward him. He sat in the shadowed corner, barely lit, his face hollowed by the dim glow. His lips hardly moved, but his eyes, sharp, predatory, locked on the window behind me. His jaw tightened. They're moving, he repeated, softer this time. The room shrank. The floor seemed to tilt. My chest squeezed so tight I struggled to pull air in. And then movement. Just at the edge of the candlelight, beyond the glass, a faint outline. A figure darting past the window, fast enough to blur, slow enough that I knew I wasn't imagining it. My wife gasped. Oh my God! The kids whimpered louder, clinging to her arms. I rushed forward, my hand bracing against the cold pane. That's when I felt it. Air. Cold, damp air leaking in through a crack in the frame. The window was open just enough to breathe. My own breath fogged in the air. Someone had opened it. Inside. Or outside. I spun back toward them, my voice breaking. Get away from the window! My son stumbled back, nearly tripping over the rug. My wife pulled the kids toward the dining table, her eyes never leaving me. Panic clung to her face, but something else was buried beneath it. A stiffness. Her hand stayed clenched too long against my daughter's shoulder, like she wasn't just protecting, she was holding back. Call the police, she demanded. Please, just call them. I grabbed the phone from the counter, the cold plastic slick in my sweaty grip. My thumb hovered over the keypad. The stranger stood now, slow and deliberate, his shadow stretching up the wall like a noose. His voice came low, the kind that cut into bone. Too late for them. The room seemed to tilt again. What do you mean too late? I hissed. His expression didn't change. No fear. No urgency. Just the twitch of his mouth, almost a smile, almost not. Do you think police run toward this kind of thing? No. They circle. They arrive after. His eyes flicked to the window, then back to me. But they... He tilted his head toward the dark glass. They're already here. My son burst out, voice shaking. This isn't funny. Just stop, okay? It's not a joke, the stranger said flatly. The flame guttered, nearly died. I cupped it with my hand, but the shadows still seemed to swell, reaching across the walls. Every second stretched until it felt like the house itself was listening. And then, bang! A loud crash exploded from the basement door, wood splintering as if something had kicked it from the inside. A loud crash came from the basement door, as if someone kicked it from inside. The basement reeked of secrets, and someone else's hands on them. The door moaned when I pulled it open, the kind of sound that crawls under your skin. My flashlight beam shook against the stairs, splashing uneven light over the peeling paint and dust-choked steps. Each creak under my foot felt like an alarm. The smell hit me first: damp earth, rusted metal, a sour tang that coated the back of my throat. I gagged but forced myself lower, step by step. The air grew colder, heavier, until every breath tasted like rot. Behind me, the stranger's voice slid through the dark. Keep going. I didn't want him there, but part of me needed him. Or maybe I was just too afraid to tell him to leave. At the bottom, the flashlight caught the lock. My gut twisted. The steel had been mangled, pried apart, warped teeth bent back. Not broken from the inside, forced open from the outside. God! I whispered. I stepped inside, the beam trembling across the concrete. My boxes, my old, private boxes, were no longer stacked neatly. They were ripped open. Papers spilled across the floor like the guts of something butchered. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking as I sifted through them. Birth certificates, tax documents, family photos I hadn't looked at in years, letters I had written in anger, in shame, things I'd never meant for anyone to read, even ones I hadn't shown my wife. No, no, no! My voice cracked. The flashlight beam flickered across a photo. My son at 5 years old, holding a plastic sword in the backyard. His face, smiling, now smeared with grime. I clutched it to my chest. Behind me, the stranger muttered, low, almost reverent. They want what's yours. I spun on him. Who the hell wants this? He stood on the last step, half shrouded in shadow. His face barely moved, but his eyes were sharp, locked on me like he was measuring every word I said. His jaw ticked, a nervous muscle betraying what his stillness tried to hide. They've been waiting, he whispered. My chest tightened. I staggered back, bumping into the metal shelving. Rust flaked onto my shoulder. Stop talking in riddles! Just tell me, who's doing this? For a moment, he didn't answer. He just stared, lips pressed in, breathing shallow. His fingers twitched at his side, like he wanted to say it, but saying it would break something open he couldn't control. Then, like spitting poison, he let the name fall. Mark! The word cracked the air. My throat closed. My vision tunneled. No, I said, shaking my head. No, he doesn't know where I live. He can't. The stranger tilted his head, watching me, expression unreadable. You think walls stop him? You think distance stops him? My voice rose, louder than I meant. I made sure he couldn't find me. Something flickered in his eyes. Pity, maybe? Or mockery. It lasted only a second before his face hardened again. He found you, he said. The flashlight wavered as my hand trembled. I forced myself to turn away from him, to scan the room again. My pulse pounded in my ears. The walls seemed closer than before, pressing in. I crouched, grabbing more papers, shoving them back into boxes, desperate to reclaim order. Each page I touched was a piece of my life, and knowing someone else's fingers had been here made me feel violated, exposed. My wife's voice floated down from upstairs, faint but urgent. Are you okay down there? What's happening? I almost shouted back, but I stopped. If Mark was here, if he was close, I didn't want to announce my fear out loud. Instead, I whispered under my breath, "This isn't possible." The stranger's feet touched the floor now, his presence heavy at my back. You don't understand. He doesn't just want things. He wants you. My stomach flipped. I stood, turning to face him, candlelight trembling on his sharp features. Why? Why me? Why my family? He leaned closer, and for the first time, I smelled him fully, sweat, stale cigarettes, and something metallic, like old coins. His voice was barely audible. Because you took from him, and he never forgives. The air seemed to freeze. My flashlight beam swung wildly across the far wall, and that's when I saw it. Scratched into the cement, jagged and deep, were words that made my blood turn to ice. I am already here. On the far wall, scratched into the cement, were the words. I am already here. It wasn't just the house breaking apart, it was us. The second I climbed the basement stairs, the air was already thick with panic. My wife's voice cut through at first, sharp and brittle like glass shattering. You've been hiding things from me, she screamed, her chest heaving, her hands trembling against the edge of the counter. I froze. My flashlight was still in my grip, but it felt useless now, dim against the explosion happening upstairs. The smell hit me next, the acrid sting of burnt food wafting from the oven we'd forgotten about. Smoke clawed at my nose and throat, adding another layer of suffocation to the chaos. The kids were crying. My youngest had her hands pressed over her ears, rocking back and forth in the corner. My son clutched the dog, whispering something frantic, like if he said it enough times the house would reset to normal. And the stranger, he stood there in the middle of my kitchen as if he owned the space. His coat hung open, damp at the edges, his eyes restless but deliberate, scanning all of us like pieces in some grotesque game of chess. "We can't leave yet," he muttered, his voice low, almost swallowed by the smoke alarm that had started shrieking. "Can't leave?" My wife turned on him, her face red with fury, but her eyes flicked back to me. "You brought him here. You brought this to our door. And now you're telling me we're prisoners in our own house?" Her words stabbed at me. I opened my mouth, but guilt wrapped around my tongue. "I reported Mark years ago," I said finally, though even to me it sounded weak, like a defense rehearsed too many times. "That's all I did. That's all I ever—" "Don't you dare say his name," she snapped, her voice cracking. Her hands gripped the counter so hard her knuckles whitened. "You swore to me we were safe. You swore this was behind us." My chest tightened. I could see the veins in her neck pulsing, the betrayal bleeding into her tone. The stranger stepped forward, pacing slowly, deliberately, like a predator circling prey. "It's not behind you. Someone let him in." The way he said it, measured, pointed, made my wife flinch. She wrapped her arms around herself as if his words had struck her physically. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "You think it's me?" she whispered, more to herself than to me. I wanted to tell her no, to shut it down, but my throat locked. I remembered the basement door, the boxes torn open, the secrets spilled. An inside hand. The kids' crying rose, a shrill chorus against the beeping alarm and the stench of charred food. I rushed to the oven, yanking it open, coughing as a wave of burnt air hit me. The blackened roast hissed in the pan, grease popping like it mocked me for thinking dinner had mattered. "This isn't about dinner," the stranger said, almost reading my thoughts. "It's about survival. And trust. You've already lost one." "Stop it!" I snapped, slamming the oven door shut. My hand trembled on the handle. "Stop talking like you know us." But his smile, thin, forced, stretched tight across his face, told me he knew more than I wanted him to. My wife's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. "If Mark knows where we live, then we're not safe. We need to go. Now." "I said you can't," the stranger growled, louder this time, his composure fracturing. His eyes darted to the windows, to the locked front door, then back at me. "If you step outside, you won't make it 10 feet. The room went silent except for the alarm. I felt the floor tilt under me. And then, soft as a secret, my daughter tugged at my sleeve. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, her lips trembling as she leaned close. "I saw Uncle Robert upstairs," she whispered. Her words dropped into me like ice water, colder than any basement secret. Uncle Robert was supposed to be dead. The betrayal was no longer outside. It had a familiar face. "Uncle Robert?" I repeated, my voice scraping raw against the smoke-thick air. My daughter's eyes stayed wide, unblinking, as if saying his name out loud might summon him closer. My chest clenched. Robert, my wife's brother. The man who had always lingered too long in conversations about money. Too curious about my accounts. Too eager to visit. But never with food, never with gifts, just questions. My mind snapped back to 3 weeks ago. He had stopped by to check the pipes. A flimsy excuse. He'd wandered into the basement and stayed there far too long, tracing his fingers along the shelves where my old boxes were stacked. When I asked what he was doing, he laughed it off. That laugh echoed now, acidic, burning down my spine. The stranger's head tilted. His expression hardened, shadows carving deep lines across his face. "He opened the door for them." The words landed like nails in the floorboards. My wife shook her head instantly, violently. "No. No, that's not true," she snapped, her voice climbing. But her hands betrayed her, shaking, twisting at the hem of her shirt, fingers picking invisible threads until her knuckles turned red. I stared at her. Why would she flinch like that? A poisonous thought whispered in my skull. "Stop it!" she barked, reading the accusation in my eyes. "Robert wouldn't. He wouldn't do that." But the tremor in her voice was louder than the smoke alarm still whining above us. The stranger stepped closer to her, his presence suffocating. His smile was thin, forced, almost polite, but his eyes were knives. He would. And you know it. The kids huddled tighter in the corner, whimpering as the tension stretched. My son buried his face against the dog's fur, trying to shut it out. The house groaned suddenly, a low creak that seemed to come from the very bones of the structure. Wood shifted in the cold night air, the sound carrying through the walls like a mocking laugh. My skin prickled. He was here. My daughter whispered again, tugging at my sleeve, her small voice almost lost beneath the alarm. I saw him, near the stairs, before the lights went out. Enough, I muttered, more to myself than to anyone else. My stomach twisted. The puzzle pieces clattered in my head. Robert's basement visit, the broken lock, the scattered documents. It fit too neatly. But if it was true, it meant the threat wasn't just outside anymore. It was blood. Family. I turned to my wife. Her face was pale now, streaked with sweat. Did you tell him anything? My voice shook with a mix of fear and anger. Her eyes darted away, then snapped back. Don't you dare accuse me. He's my brother. He's all I have left. All you have left? My voice cracked. What about us? What about your children? The stranger let the silence hang just long enough before slicing through it. He sold you out. For money. Or maybe just because he could. Shut up! My wife screamed, her voice breaking into jagged pieces. But the stranger didn't move, didn't blink. He just watched her unravel, his patience almost worse than violence. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream at them both, to shake answers free. But then a sound outside froze me, the crunch of boots against frozen grass. I turned slowly toward the kitchen window, and there he was. Robert stood in the yard, framed by the dim glow of the porch light. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders relaxed, and his face, God, his face, wore a smile so calm, so certain, it made my stomach drop. He had been waiting, watching, enjoying every second of our collapse. Through the glass, Robert's smile widened, and I realized he wasn't here to visit, he was here to claim something. I decided to fight back, even if it burned me alive. The words left my lips in a whisper, but they echoed inside my skull like a vow I couldn't take back. Are you sure? The stranger asked, his jaw tight, eyes darting to the window. His hand trembled slightly, barely noticeable unless you were staring for it like I was. I nodded. I can't run anymore. Not from him. Not in my own house. The faintest flicker of approval crossed his face, but it didn't soften his tone. Once you start, there's no going back. My pulse hammered in my ears. I know. From outside, a sharp chemical sting cut through the night air. Gasoline. My stomach turned as I realized Robert was out there, painting the yard in fuel like an artist preparing his masterpiece. My lungs tightened at the thought. If he struck a match, everything I loved would go up in flames. Behind me, my wife's sobs cracked the silence. She clutched our youngest against her chest, knuckles white. Her loyalty to her brother had always been complicated, tangled with childhood debts and guilt. But tonight the tears running down her face told me she finally saw him for what he was. Please, she whispered. Please don't make this worse. I crouched in front of her, my hand on her knee. I have to, I murmured. For the kids, for you. Her eyes searched mine, torn, afraid. But beneath the fear, I caught something else, resignation. I gathered the children quickly, ushering them into the back bedroom. Stay together. Don't open the door until I come back, I instructed, forcing steadiness into my voice. They stared at me with wide, confused eyes. My eldest asked, Dad, is Uncle Robert going to hurt us? The words twisted my chest. I swallowed hard. Not if I can help it. I shut the door before they could see my face break. Back in the living room, I dug through the drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. My hand shook as I set it beneath the couch cushion, angled just right to pick up every word. Proof. That's what I needed. Evidence of what Robert had become. The stranger stood near the curtain, watching me work. His voice was low, steady. You're playing a dangerous game. That's the point. The house seemed to shrink around me, every sound amplified. The tick, tick, tick of the wall clock. The soft hiss of wind slipping through the window frame. Even my own breathing felt too loud, like it could give me away. I walked to the front door, my palms slick against the knob. Slowly, deliberately, I unlocked it. The click echoed like a gunshot. The stranger stiffened. You're baiting him. Yes, I said. And he'll take it. My wife's muffled sob drifted from the hallway. It stabbed at me, but I couldn't let it shake me. I had to look strong, even if my insides were unraveling. Minutes dragged like hours. My pulse matched the clock's rhythm, thudding in my chest. I imagined Robert outside, his boots crushing gravel, his smile that never reached his eyes. I imagined him holding the match between two fingers, savoring the power. I glanced at the stranger. His jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed something else, fear. You really think you can outplay him? I don't need to outplay him, I whispered. I just need to catch him slipping. The night pressed against the windows. Every shadow looked like it was leaning closer, waiting for the strike. And then, the front door creaked. The sound sliced through me, sharp as a blade. I froze, breath caught in my throat. The knob turned. The door opened an inch, then two. Robert stepped inside. His eyes swept the room, a smirk tugging at his lips. The smell of gasoline clung to him like a second skin. His movements were casual, almost lazy, but I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the hunger in his stare. And he wasn't alone. A figure shifted behind him, stepping into the light. Mark. My stomach dropped. The front door creaked open, and Robert stepped inside with someone behind him. Mark. The man I'd buried in the past had come back to dig up my life. I froze where I stood. Mark filled the doorway like a shadow that refused to die. He looked older, yes, but meaner too, his face carved with bitterness, his eyes burning with the kind of satisfaction only vengeance feeds. Long time, huh? His lips twisted into something that might have been a smile if it weren't poisoned. He stepped forward, heavy boots grinding mud across my floor, each step a deliberate violation. The metallic sting of gasoline followed him in, clinging to his jacket like smoke from a fire I couldn't escape. Robert trailed behind him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. His shoulders slumped, his mouth pressed into a thin line. Guilt, shame, or maybe fear. Mark tilted his head, scanning the room. His gaze lingered on my wife, her trembling hands clutching the armrests of the couch. So this is the family man now, he sneered. Funny. You take everything from me, and you still manage to play house. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. You don't belong here. His laugh was low, humorless. Oh, I belong. More than you think. I felt the recorder humming quietly under the cushion, a secret heartbeat in the silence. I forced my face to stay neutral, though inside my chest, rage coiled like a spring. You ruined my life, Mark continued, pacing slowly, eyes locked on me. His boots left wet streaks on the wooden floor. Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up every day choking on someone else's choices? Yours specifically. Robert shifted uneasily. His jaw ticked, but he still didn't speak. My wife finally broke. Her voice cracked. Robert, you knew? He flinched. His eyes darted between her and Mark, then down at the floor. That was answer enough. She gasped, covering her mouth. Her world shattered in that instant, and I saw it on her face. The realization that the brother she defended had betrayed us all. Mark's gaze sharpened, catching every tremor in her body. He fed on it. You see? Even your precious husband kept things from you. He didn't tell you how deep it went, how much blood he's got on his hands. Stop twisting this, I snapped. He turned back to me, smile gone. His voice dropped to a near whisper, but it carried like a blade. I've been watching you. Weeks now. Every creak in this house that kept you up at night? That was me. Every missing tool from your shed? Me. Every time your kids swore they saw someone in the yard? His grin returned, sick and slow. That was me, too. My stomach flipped, bow rising. He wasn't bluffing. The details were too sharp, too cruelly specific. You sick bastard, I muttered. Careful, he said, stepping closer. His breath carried that gasoline tang, sharp enough to sting my nose. Don't forget who's holding the match. My wife whimpered softly. The sound tore through me. Inside, I screamed at myself not to lunge, not to shatter the fragile trap I'd set with the recorder. I needed him to keep talking, to bury himself with his own words. Why now? I asked, steadying my voice, forcing calm. After all these years? Mark's eyes narrowed. His tongue ran over his teeth before he answered. Because you thought you won. You thought burying me in the past meant I stayed there. But people like me, we don't rot. We wait. His laugh slithered into the room, colder than the draft seeping under the door. Robert finally spoke, voice tight. Mark, maybe this isn't. Shut up. Mark barked, spinning on him. For a flicker, his mask slipped. His hands shook. His jaw quivered with barely restrained fury. Then he turned back to me, face composed again, voice soft and venomous. He always was weak. That's why I used him. He couldn't stand against me then, and he can't now. I locked eyes with Robert, searching for any shred of courage in nothing. Just shame and silence. Mark leaned in, so close I could see the red veins threading through his eyes. You're not the hero here. You're the reason I became this. Don't forget it. I swallowed, my heartbeat rattling against my ribs. The recorder caught every word. And then he said the words that shattered me. Your wife helped me. And then he said the words that shattered me. Your wife helped me. The truth cuts deeper when it comes from the person you trust most. My wife's face crumbled like glass under pressure. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. Then, in a broken whisper, she said, I told Robert, once, about the documents. Where you kept them. I didn't think he'd give them to Mark. My chest constricted. The air left the room. You what? My voice scraped out raw, jagged. Her hands trembled against her skirt. It was years ago. He asked where you kept the old papers. I thought it was harmless. I swear I never imagined. Mark clapped slowly, the sound sharp in the silence. His grin widened, stretching cruelly across his face. And there it is. The grand reveal. Turns out you didn't even know your own wife. Shut your mouth, I growled. But his words were already inside me, festering. The smell hit me then, smoke, faint but growing. It drifted through the cracked window, wrapping around my throat. My stomach dropped. Robert's fire was spreading. You should have been paying attention, Mark taunted, pacing in front of me. His boots scuffed the floor, leaving dark streaks. You thought your enemy was outside. But no, pal. He was sitting right across from you at dinner every damn night. My wife shook her head violently, tears cutting down her cheeks. No, you don't understand. I never meant to help him. I thought it was just clutter. He said he wanted to help organize. I didn't know. Her words tangled together, desperate, pleading. But the damage was done. Betrayal burned hotter than the smoke. I could barely look at her. My hands shook, rage boiling under my skin, but the stranger's eyes caught mine. A subtle shake of his head. A warning, don't lose control. Mark saw it. He leaned in, his breath thick with gasoline. See that? Even he knows you're not in charge anymore. You're a puppet. And your strings? They're made of lies. Upstairs, my children screamed. The sound ripped through me like a blade. Their fear, their voices, it snapped something in me. Daddy! One of them cried, muffled by walls but clear enough to gut me. My wife staggered toward me, clutching my arm. Please, believe me. I didn't mean harm. I didn't know Robert would ever. I yanked my arm free, every muscle rigid. You gave him the key. I spat. You gave him the piece he needed. Her sob was sharp, broken. I didn't know. Mark chuckled low, circling us like a vulture. That's the beauty of it. She didn't need to know. She just needed to open her pretty little mouth. And she did. The smoke thickened, the acrid tang of burning wood threading into the room. My throat burned with every breath. The stranger finally spoke, voice firm but calm. This house won't hold much longer. Decide what matters, your rage or your family. His words cut through the haze. My fist unclenched, but my pulse still thundered. Mark tilted his head, mocking sympathy. Poor hero. Can't even trust the woman who shares his bed. He pulled something from his pocket, flicking it once, twice. The metallic click was unmistakable. A lighter. Its small flame flared to life, tiny yet more terrifying than any weapon. He held it up, grin splitting wide. Let's finish this. Mark pulled out a lighter, grinning. Let's finish this. When you fight fire with fire, someone gets burned. Drop it! I roared, my voice breaking as I lunged. The lighter flickered in Mark's hand, flame dancing like a devil's tongue. I slammed into him with every ounce of rage that had been festering in my chest for years. The impact sent us both crashing into the table. China exploded, plates shattered, silverware skittered across the floor. My fist connected with his chest, again and again, each blow fueled by betrayal, humiliation, fear. Mark's grunt turned into a snarl, spittle flying. You think you can stop me? He spat, blood staining his teeth. You won't destroy my family! I screamed back, voice hoarse, fist trembling but unrelenting. Behind me, chaos erupted. Robert lunged forward, but the stranger was faster. He twisted Robert's arm behind his back, slamming him face first against the wall. The sound of bones scraping plaster cut through the roar of fire. Stay down! The stranger barked, his voice low, commanding. Robert writhed, teeth clenched, but the stranger's grip was iron. Dad, stop! One of my daughters screamed from upstairs, her voice shrill through the thickening smoke. Their cries stabbed deeper than any blade could. I wanted to shout back, to tell them it would be okay, but the truth lodged in my throat like ash. Mark bucked his hips, throwing me sideways. My shoulder smashed against the broken table leg. Pain flared, white-hot, but I gritted my teeth and rolled back onto him. His eyes locked on mine, wild, bloodshot, brimming with hatred. And yet, beneath it, I saw fear. Just a flicker, a shadow that told me he wasn't as untouchable as he pretended. "You don't even know them," he hissed, voice guttural. "Your wife, your kids, they've been feeding me pieces of you for years." I froze for half a second, heart seizing. His lips curled into a broken grin. "Ask her," he spat, jerking his chin toward my wife, who was crumpled in the corner, face streaked with tears. "She opened the door. She gave me the keys." My wife sobbed louder, hands covering her mouth. "I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know what he'd do." The smell of gasoline was choking now. Curtains curled black as flames licked higher. Heat pressed against my skin like 1,000 invisible hands. Mark seized the hesitation. He slammed his forehead into mine. Stars burst across my vision. My body toppled sideways, chest heaving. "Pathetic," he sneered, wiping blood from his mouth. "You always were." But before he could rise, I surged back, tackling him to the ground. My knuckles smashed into his jaw, 1, 2, 3 brutal strikes. His head snapped back with each blow, the recorder's red light blinking in the corner, capturing every word, every crack of bone against flesh. "Say it," I roared, fist poised above his face. "Say you're done." Mark coughed, laughter bubbling through the blood. "Done? This is just the beginning. Don't listen." The stranger growled from across the room, his knee grinding into Robert's spine. "And this. I can't," my wife screamed, her voice ragged. "He'll kill us all." "Not if I stop him first." My voice was a rasp, more animal than human. Mark clawed at my arm, nails digging into my skin, hot blood running down to my wrist. His grin widened despite the bruises swelling his face. "You're too late," he whispered, almost tender. "Everything burns." And then, with a sudden twist of his body, he shoved me sideways, wriggling free just enough to stretch his arm across the wreckage. His fingers brushed against the fallen lighter. "No!" I lunged, catching his wrist, veins bulging, teeth grinding as I forced it back. Flames popped louder, windows cracking from the heat. My children's cries turned to muffled sobs upstairs. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, hope bleeding in, but still too far away. Mark's breath stank of blood and gasoline. His eyes locked on mine, pupils blown wide, madness radiating. "Watch closely," he rasped, voice breaking into a manic chuckle. His thumb dragged down the flint wheel. The spark hissed to life, a tiny flame blooming in the smoke-choked air. Mark broke free, reached for the lighter, and struck it. The fire didn't care who deserved it, it burned all the same. The lighter flared in Mark's hand. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. But then, his smirk faltered. The flames leapt straight toward him, hungrily catching on the gasoline that had soaked his jacket. His eyes went wide, horror flickering just long enough to replace arrogance. "No!" he screamed, slapping at his chest, stumbling backward. The fire spread instantly, racing up his sleeves, orange tongues wrapping around him like some demonic embrace. The smell hit me, burning cloth, burning flesh, and my stomach lurched. "You idiot!" Robert shrieked, shoving against the stranger's grip. His voice cracked with something more than anger. It was fear. Mark thrashed, crashing into a chair, knocking it over with a splintering crack. His face twisted between pain and rage. "Help me! Robert, help me!" But Robert didn't move toward him. He bolted for the door instead, eyes wild, desperate for escape. The stranger slammed him to the ground before he could reach it, his forearm grinding into Robert's neck. "You're not going anywhere," he growled. Robert wheezed, hands clawing uselessly at the man's arm. His eyes bulged, terror finally cutting through that smug mask he always wore. Behind me, my wife's voice ripped through the smoke. "The kids! We need to get them out!" She staggered toward the stairs, coughing, arms outstretched, calling their names. "Go!" I choked, my throat raw, lungs screaming for clean air. Mark's screams tore through the house, high, animal, not even human anymore. He spun, arms flailing, fire clinging tighter the more he fought it. His hair lit, crackling, the smell thick and metallic in my nose. "Stop, drop, roll!" My wife sobbed, though her words were useless. Mark wasn't listening. He was too far gone, panic eating his mind faster than the fire devoured his body. I stumbled after her, every inhale scraping my chest like knives. My vision blurred, but I could hear my children crying upstairs, tiny, broken voices. I've got them!" she screamed. I saw her silhouette vanish into the smoke, then reappear moments later, dragging two terrified figures into her arms. Their sobs cut sharper than the fire's roar. "Get out!" I shouted, pushing her toward the front door. "Don't wait, just go!" The door groaned open, spilling a rush of cold night air inside. My wife staggered into the darkness, clutching the kids, their screams carrying as the fire's roar followed. I turned back. Mark collapsed onto the floor, body convulsing, flames wrapping him like a funeral shroud. His hands clawed at the ground, nails scraping wood until they left trails. His voice had weakened, hoarse, broken, but it was still there. You'll remember me," he rasped. His eyes, bloodshot, furious, unrelenting, found mine through the fire. I froze. My chest heaved. For years I had imagined this moment, justice, revenge, an ending. But seeing it like this, raw and grotesque, wasn't triumph. It was something darker. The house itself seemed alive. Wood snapped and popped like bones breaking. Glass shattered from the heat, shards raining onto the floor. The flames climbed the walls, crawling toward the ceiling. "Stay with me!" The stranger barked at Robert, who writhed weakly beneath him. "You don't get to run from this." Robert coughed, voice strangled. "You'll burn too!" The stranger didn't flinch. His jaw was set, eyes locked on me as if daring me to give in, to leave him with the burden. My hands shook, torn between horror and grim satisfaction. My heart hammered, every beat screaming that this was justice, ugly, brutal justice. Mark's body buckled one last time. Then he stilled, swallowed whole by the inferno he had lit himself, and through the fire, as skin blistered and flames devoured, his face turned toward me. Not in terror, not in defeat, he was smiling. As the flames roared, I saw Mark's face one last time, smiling through the fire. The fire went out, but the damage stayed. I coughed as firefighters dragged me across the wet lawn. The night sky glowed orange behind me, our house collapsing into a skeleton of sparks and smoke. My kids clung to my chest, their tiny fists digging into my shirt as if I might vanish too. My wife's sobs cut through the sirens. Why didn't I see it sooner?" she whispered, her voice breaking. I tried to answer, but my throat was scorched raw from smoke. All I could do was hold them tighter. The smell of charred wood clung to my skin like a second layer I couldn't wash off. A firefighter crouched beside me, his helmet streaked with soot. "You're lucky. A minute longer, and we'd have been pulling out bodies." Lucky. That word tasted like ash in my mouth. My wife knelt in front of me, her face streaked black, her eyes wide and wild. "This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Don't." My voice cracked. "Not now." The kids buried their faces in my arms, whimpering. My eldest whispered, "Daddy, are we homeless?" I swallowed hard. "We're alive. That's what matters." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't enough. Behind the fire trucks, a detective in a rumpled suit scribbled in his notepad. He walked over, flashing a badge. "Sir, we're calling this arson. Accelerants were found near the back door. You know who might have done this?" My jaw tightened. Mark and Robert, together. His pen stopped mid-scratch. "You're sure?" I pulled the recorder from my pocket, the one I'd hidden, the one that had captured every vile threat. My fingers trembled as I pressed it into his hand. "I'm more than sure." He raised an eyebrow, hit play, and let the voices pour out. Mark's laugh, Robert's whisper. My blood boiled just hearing them. The detective's face hardened. "This is enough to bury them." I thought it would bring relief. It didn't. When he left, my wife reached for me, her hands shaking. "I swear, I never thought they'd go this far. I never wanted." I pulled back. "You let him in. You trusted him. And now look." My words came out sharper than I meant, but I couldn't stop. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I was blind, okay? I was weak, but I didn't light the match." The silence after that was worse than the sirens. My youngest tugged my sleeve. "Where's the man? The one who helped us out?" I blinked. The stranger. He'd been there in the chaos, pulling us towards safety, and then, nothing. Gone. No name. No trace. "He left," I said quietly. "Sometimes angels don't stay." But in my gut, I knew he wasn't an angel. He was something else, and the fact that he vanished without a word haunted me more than the flames. The hours blurred. Cops swarmed. Neighbors whispered. My wife sat with her head in her hands. I just stared at the blackened skeleton of what used to be our home, the smell of wet ash burning into my lungs. By dawn, the fire was out. The damage wasn't. Days bled into weeks, Insurance calls, police interviews, endless questions I didn't want to answer. My wife tried to make amends, tried to talk, but I kept my words short. Every time I looked at her, I saw the chain of choices that led to the fire. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Mark's laugh echoing in the smoke. One night, while tucking the kids into borrowed beds at my sister's house, my eldest looked at me and whispered, "Will it ever feel normal again?" I forced a smile. One day. But inside I knew scars don't heal clean. I wanted to believe the worst was over. That with Mark and Robert behind bars, we could rebuild. But the truth gnawed at me. That kind of evil doesn't burn out. It lingers. And then, just when the air had started to feel breathable again, I opened the mailbox. My hands froze. An envelope. No return address. Just my name. The handwriting stopped my heart. Jagged. Familiar. Mocking. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. With Mark's handwriting. The dead shouldn't be able to write letters. That was my first thought when I saw the envelope sitting in the mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in jagged ink that twisted like a scar across the paper. My hands shook as I picked it up. The envelope smelled faintly of smoke, like it had been pulled straight out of the fire that had nearly killed us. My throat tightened. "Something wrong?" My wife called from the porch, her voice thin. I forced my hand behind my back. "Junk mail." But she saw my face. Her eyes narrowed, wet from weeks of guilt. "You're lying." "What is it?" I didn't answer. I tore the envelope open with my thumb, the paper splitting like skin. Inside, a single sheet. No greeting. No signature. Just words that clawed across the page. "You think it's over. It's not. Someone else is still inside." My vision blurred. I read it again, slower this time, the letters swimming. Inside where? My rebuilt house? My family? My own head? "Give it to me," my wife whispered, stepping closer. I shook my head. "No. Not yet." Her hands curled into fists. "You can't keep shutting me out. Not after everything." I held up the letter, the words burning holes into me. "This is him. Mark. His handwriting. His voice, even on paper." She swallowed hard, eyes darting toward the dark windows of the house behind us. "But he's gone," they said. "Did they?" My laugh came out bitter, broken. "Prison doesn't stop fire from spreading. It just changes where the sparks land." The kids peeked from the doorway. My eldest frowned. "Dad? What's going on?" "Nothing." I snapped too quickly. The way their faces fell made me hate myself more than the letter did. I crumpled the paper, shoved it into my pocket, and marched inside. The walls of my sister's borrowed home felt suddenly too close, every creak of the floorboards like footsteps chasing me. That night, I read the letter again in the kitchen, the overhead light buzzing. I smoothed the wrinkles with my palm, staring at the line, "Someone else is still inside." My wife sat across from me, wringing her hands until the knuckles went white. "Inside what? The house? Us? Maybe he means you," I said before I could stop myself. Her lips parted, hurt flashing in her eyes. "You think I'd still be working with him? After he tried to kill us all? I don't know what to think anymore." My voice cracked, and I hated how weak it sounded. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. Every sound was louder than it should have been. Finally I stood, grabbed a lighter, and set the corner of the letter on fire. The flames licked up fast, curling the paper black. My wife gasped. "What are you doing?" "Erasing him." But the truth? I couldn't. The words were already etched into me. Even as ash crumbled in the sink, I could still see them, still hear them. That night I didn't sleep. Every shadow in the room stretched too long. Every gust of wind through the cracks in the window whispered his name. I kept turning my head, convinced someone was standing in the corner, waiting. At 3 a.m., my wife whispered in the dark, "What if this isn't over?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down, I knew she was right. By morning, the kids noticed my silence. "Dad, you look sick," my youngest said, her tiny hand pressing against my arm. I forced a smile. "I'm fine." But my voice shook, betraying me. Days passed. I tried to go through motions, police reports, rebuilding, pretending. But every knock, every creak, every flicker of light sent my heart racing. And then it started. The doorbell. At first I thought I imagined it. A faint chime in the middle of the night. I stumbled to the door, flung it open. Nothing. Just the cold air pressing in. The next night, it rang again. Louder. Longer. My wife clutched my arm. "There's no one there." But I swear I saw it. The faint shadow pulling back, just out of reach. Now every night it happens. The chime cuts through the dark, sharp as a knife. The kids wake up crying. My wife clings to me. And me? I just stand there, frozen, staring at the empty porch, knowing exactly whose hand is pressing that button. And now every night, I hear the doorbell again.